So I wanted to talk about one topic that I was reading from the last 2 3 days a lot. That what is lagging from the government schools of India. Why we have a perception about government schools that they are not good in comparison with the private schools. So I was reading about it and I was actually doing a lot of net surfing about that. What is it that is lagging in the government schools of India? So there are a couple of things which I would like to discuss right now, and if we'll start point by point, the first point that I would like to point out right now, it's infrastructure. So if you talk about the infrastructure of the government schools now, you always have that perception that government schools are always that old buildings, and classrooms are not that meant for studying. Because when we talk about schools and when we talk about classrooms, the environment should be meant for studying. It should have some, in the classroom should have some engaging drawings, posters, and it should be meant for studying. But there is like a lack of engaging class in the government schools. Buildings are not proper. There is like not you will not get proper seating arrangements for the students, not comfortable table and chairs in the government schools. If you'll go to government school, I've got a chance to visit government school couple of times, and I actually got to see that the benches were not really comfortable for the students. So I feel like that is one of the reasons why government schools lags behind the private schools of India. And if we'll come above that, I would like to talk about the conditioning of a student. So if we will talk about the conditioning of student, we all know that when a kid, when he is just 3 years, 4 years, 5 years old, he doesn't really know about anything or anything about the world. He's just a very new infant, you can even say him. And when he went to school, he doesn't really know what his responsibilities is. So parents, from their side, they always it doesn't matter for the parents if they're coming from the rich society or if they're coming from the middle class society. They'll always pay from their side, they always play the responsibility. But when they are sending their kids to a government school, now basically what they are doing is that they're expecting a responsibility from a third person, like teacher. So when we talk about the teachers of the government school, I'm not questioning the potential of the government teachers. They are the best teachers, that's why they got government jobs. But here what I'm talking about is that pressure on the government teachers, because government teachers doesn't really have those management and those floor in charges, which could build up that pressure on the government teachers. So there is a lack of pressure on the government teachers, which will make them not there is a lack of sincerity, you can say, that has been shown in the government teachers. So they do not play their role from their side for the conditioning of a student. And also when we talk about conditioning of a student, it means that student should see something which he wanted to become in his life. So if he wanted to speak, I mean, if I doesn't I also feel like I'm not a very good speaker. I'm trying my best. But when there is just a new kid in 6th class, 7th class, when he actually heard two teachers talking to each other in English, he also wanted to try that. So there is also a lack of teachers engagement, in the students in itself. Because when we talk about because we always have that perception about government schools, that government schools and the teachers doesn't really care about the students, and the student doesn't really care about the teachers. So here I would like to highlight one thing. The teacher is coming from a good family background, he is educated, he's coming from the good family background, and he's coming to the class. But in the government schools, the students who generally go are coming from the backward classes. Their family or their parents do not have that much money so that they could afford a good school. So they are actually coming from the background where they are not serious about the studies. But it is the responsibility of the teachers to make them realize that how important that study is for themselves, to become something, to become independent. And then there is a lack of sincerity which teacher shows from the government schools. That is the one point I wanted to highlight right now. And now coming ahead, I would like to talk about the poor facilities. So I have actually got a personal experience about poor facilities. So when I was in 12th class, not 12th, when I was actually taking a drop for JEE, during that time I went to give my NDA exam. It was on 4th September 2022. So I went to give my NDA exam, and it was in Jaipur. I was actually living in Kota that time, and I went to Jaipur to give my NDA exam. So I went to that. My actually exam got conducted in one of the Bal Vidyalaya something. I don't really remember the name, but it was a government school. I went there. So when I went there, I gave my first exam, which was max, and after that we got around 2 hours break. So during that time, what I found out is that they don't have any water coolers, and it was in the mid of September, when there is absolutely, there is like 35-36 degree in the day, and I don't found any water coolers. There was a tap water, and it was also very hot, so I couldn't find a water cooler in a government school. And that too, when I went to the government school of a tier 1 city, which is Jaipur. Jaipur is a tier 1 city, and I went to the government school of a tier 1 city, and I couldn't find a water cooler. I went to the toilets, and the toilets were not good. I mean, can you imagine? And that is the condition of the government school, which is of the tier 1 city. So you just imagine about the conditioning and about the conditions of the government schools who are from the tier 2, tier 3 cities or Dehat. You can imagine the conditions of those government schools. What could be that if the government school of a tier 1 city is having a problem of not even getting a water coolers for the students in this heat scorching summer, and they could not even found out a water cooler for the students. So what could we expect more from that? And that is the problem with the government schools, because there is a lack of management. Because in the private schools, what we generally feel that we always got all the facilities, from tap water to toilets, from good teachers, and there is a lot of engagement from the teachers also, because there is actually a pressure, because when we talk about a general private schools basically works on the function ki every floor would have their floor in charge or their senior teachers who would be there on every floor, and they'd like to inspect every class of that floor. So they would always build that pressure on the teachers. But in the government school, there is a lack of pressure which is being imposed on the teachers, and which makes them, I don't like to use the word lazy, because lazy would not be the right word to use for the teachers, but I feel like somewhere they try to avoid the workload. They do not show their responsibility to the students, because students at that age, they do not know about what is the importance of study. So it's their responsibility to make them realize what study could impact their life. And now the third thing is, I would like to talk about that what is lagging in the government schools of India. It is about maintenance. So when I talk about maintenance, you will always see that the private schools always like to build an events and engaging events and sports and extracurricular activities for the students, because they want the overall development of a student. And the overall development of student cannot be only mental wise, it can be physically as well. So there is every time you see in the private schools, if you are coming from the private school, you will always see that there is a lot of engagement from the school to actually make a overall development of the student. But in the government school, there is lack of engagement from the schools, because government is funding the schools, and there would be a one senior teacher, or maybe there is a one principal would be there in that school who would like to manage all the things. There are not many multiple people are there in the government school who are actually working as a floor in charge or as a senior teachers, which can impose a pressure on the teachers who are actually taking the class. So that is one point which I like to highlight. And also, when you talk about a student, when he is going to the school, we don't only want them to be educated, but we want them to be mentally fit, to be physically fit. So private schools always conduct many sports events and many things, events, annual functions. But in the government schools, there is lack of those things, because we want to actually make the overall development of a student. And that's why I feel like government schools lags behind the private schools. And also, one of the thing which I can understand from the government side as well, if you will see the backstory of this thing, is that government, there are if you talk about there are two things which I would like to talk. First is government schools, and second is government colleges. So the condition of the government schools, but in case of government colleges, it's totally vice versa. It is totally opposite, because in the case of a government college, because in India there are only good, I mean, if you talk about the engineering background, there are very less government colleges which is like really good. So if they are less in numbers, the government could provide more fund, to each and every college. But when we talk about the government school, there are like hundred and thousand of government schools in India, in every district, in every city, in every state. So it's not possible for the government to provide funds to each and every single school. But in the case of government college, government can provide funds to each and every college, because colleges are very less in numbers. If you talk about the engineering college, there are 23 IITs and there are 35 NITs. So you can say that good tier 1 government colleges in India are only maybe less than 100, I would say. Tier 1 government colleges are less than 100. So that is a problem. So we have to understand the government's point of view also, because governments want to also invest in education as well, but it is not actually it does not become possible for the government to provide more funds to the government school, to each and every government school of India, because they are more in numbers, every district, every city. So that is the one thing which I can understand from the government side as well. But I feel like there should be a heavy involvement of government in the upgradation of the government schools, because if you will not upgrade, you will actually see a drastic drop into the qualities of the students. Because generally, you have also seen Super 13, Super 30 also, the students were coming from the middle class or from the back lower society. They have that confidence problem, and that you can see into the students of the government schools as well. And here I'm not talking about the Kendra Vidyalaya, because they are like elite level, but the normal government schools, there is a confidence. If you take a student from the government school and you just put him in a debate competition with any random person who is from the private CBSE affiliated school, and you'll see the difference. That the difference is basically the environment. The government school don't have that environment, and I feel like we should do things to improve that environment, because if government will not put efforts from the front to improve the environment, to improve the teachers, not from their potential side but from their engagement side, because we want the teachers to get more engaged with the students, that we can see into the private schools. So there are a couple of things that I highlighted, and I tried to highlight it in this video. I feel like, I believe like I could provide a value. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can put your comments into the comment section. Bye.